evening, along with my colleague, Lynn Savage. So I suppose, guys, the focus of tonight's webinar is focusing at, I suppose, pitch priorities. Over the coming weeks, we'll have loads of players going back onto the fields of play. So from a specific, we're going to specifically look at from an injury prevention, from an athletic development point of view. I suppose over the last number of weeks, loads of players, including us as coaches, are really looking forward to going back onto the field of play. And I suppose the main priority is to keep those players on the field of play when the games come around. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking at tonight. Last night, our colleagues in the Gaelic Games webinar series looked at, I suppose, getting back to return to play from a pitch point of view in terms of what does a pitch look like, the structure of it. I suppose what kind of activities can you do in terms of, and also what kind of considerations you need to take in place. So tonight specifically, we'll be looking from an injury prevention and a development point of view. If there's any questions that you have throughout the session, guys, in your tab there in your Zoom, you should be able just log them in. Just any questions you have throughout the presentation, please put in the questions. I log same along with my colleague Lynn, and we present them to Cliona as we go along during the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my the presenter tonight, and that's Cliona O'Connor. Cliona is a coach developer with LGFA, but also is a Gaelic for Teens ambassador with us. And Cliona has a huge role in the background in relation to our coach education as well. So Cliona also is a former All-Ireland winner with Dublin and is also involved with the Dublin senior hurlers from a strength and conditioning athletic development point of view. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Cliona. Cliona, over to you, and best of luck. As I said, guys, any questions, just put them into the question and answer function and we'll monitor them throughout. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for the intro, and welcome everybody to this evening's webinar. I don't know about you, but it's been a long couple of months, and delighted that in Dublin the sun is shining. GAA clubs are starting to open up, so things are looking up for everybody in terms of the GAA community and getting back to where the thing we like doing best, which is on the pitch. I decided I would start with this quote from Stephen Covey, I think. Most of us spend too much time on what is urgent and not enough time on what's important. I think it's really important that us as coaches, we acknowledge the new scenario that we're going to be in, the new challenges we're going to face over the next couple of months, and let's not pretend they're not there, and let's really try and remember what is the most important stuff that we could be doing on the pitch. Because in a general season, we have loads of different things, and you could be working on everything. You'd be working on all sorts of skills, all sorts of fitness, all sorts of tactics, but we never ever have time. We always say, over the so many years I've been doing coach education, it's always like, how do we fit all this in? And now that's going to be a bigger challenge than it usually is. So what my aim tonight is to try and, I guess, throw out questions and challenges and ideas to make, or to help you think about those minutes that you have on the pitch. What is the best way to spend them? Because it is that aspect is going to be challenging, and there's going to be so many things that you could do, and it's about picking what's most important and not what you think you have to do or where the pressure's coming from, but what is important for us now in the GAA community. Now, making sure my slide clicks on. Okay, so to start with, just a quick reminder on the current timeline. So today is Wednesday the 24th, and if a club is ready and confident that they've got everything in order, clubs are allowed open today. Minor and juveniles from Saturday the 27th. Contact training resumes next Monday, so 29th. So today, Wednesday, up until next Monday, we shouldn't be doing any contact at all. And on this point, most people are aware at the minute there are differences between Ireland and Northern Ireland at the minute because of government guidelines. So if you're based in Northern Ireland, we are still awaiting directives on a few things in terms of contact and when that will come back. And there are some differences that we need to be aware of in relation to group sizes. 15 players in an area. In Northern Ireland, it's 10 people in an area. So that would be 2 coaches and 8 players, for example. And for juvenile teams, the coach and player ratio is in line with the code of behaviour. From the 29th, challenge games can resume, again, based on contact we're still awaiting a date for Northern Ireland, and the advice around that is to try and stay local. So to be in line with the general advice for the country is stay as local as you can unless you need to go elsewhere. So playing friendlies with local clubs from the 29th is okay. And the date for club fixtures then to begin July the 17th. And we'll talk about that lead in. So that could be a 2.5 or 2.5 or 3 weeks lead in from, let's say, from next Monday. Pre, post, during session protocol, there's a portal on GAA e-learning around COVID-19 and the protocol around that for coaches and clubs. So I would direct you to that in relation to all of those queries instead of, I won't be talking about any of that stuff tonight. And also, as William mentioned, our colleagues in the GAA did a webinar last night about sort of the layout of the pitch and how the pitches would look and maybe the logistics of a training session. And if you want to watch that, if you haven't watched it, I'd recommend you watch that as well. But tonight, what I want to talk about is really what do you choose to do on a pitch and how do you progress it over time? How do you progress it over the next while? So what is the reality now? The reality now, if you're dealing with adults, so what are you going to come up against or have to deal with as a coach? Varied fitness levels, for sure. So some players might have been doing loads of stuff. Other players may not have done anything. So you don't really know what you're going to be met with. And the spectrum that you're dealing with could be quite wide at the minute. You're dealing with a short lead into competition. Because here's another point. I was thinking, so I do a lot of work around the physical preparation of athletes. So I was thinking, well, what is the big difference between a regular off season? So you meet a team in January. Well, technically they mightn't have been playing for two months or 2.5 months. So what's the difference now? Well, one of the big differences is the lead-in time. So we're under pressure to get them up to a certain pitch for competition. So that's something that we don't really have to deal with in January. Think about January, you usually have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks to ease yourself back into it, and there's no immediate pressure. So that's a major difference psychologically and physically. You could have a range as a motivation in players. Some of them mad to get back, others a little bit unsure and sure, is there any point now? So that's a challenge too. Logistical challenges, shorter times on the pitch because pitches are in demand now, maybe. Can't do it the way we know, and that gives uncertainty. So I know for me, I'll be 100% honest with you in terms of preparing teams for championship now. I'm thinking, well, I actually cannot do, there's no way that I can do what I would usually do. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, what's my process to figure out what I should do and make good decisions? Because we're under different constraints now. And that is just the reality. A pressure to push. Maybe your club team started at the start of the year thinking, we're going to go hell for leather and we're going to win the championship. And now, okay, well, we haven't trained in 3 months and the championship could be in, 4 weeks. Are we still in the same mindset and what are we going to do? And how am I going to get players up there and what's the expectation? And that's that idea of what's urgent and what is important. And then another key point from the physical preparation of players is when the championship starts, a game starts, there's going to be minimum time. So our season is going to be squashed. That is a key thing we need to think about in terms of the preparation of players. And if you're a dual club or there's players playing other sports, so they're going to be playing a lot of games in a condensed period of time. So that is a significant concern for injury risk and injury prevention and general fitness and motivation and all sorts of things. And for our coaching, if we've got championship game after game after game, when do we get to work on things? So we've got to think about that. And if maybe you're dealing with underage players or younger players, they're probably going to be giddy. They haven't been together with a ball in a long time. And that's normal. And there's nothing you can do about that. Drop in skill level. So what have they been missing? They've been missing a ball for a couple of months and they might have been kicking against a wall, but maybe they haven't been kicking to a friend. So there could be a drop in skill level. Again, motivation. Again, logistical challenges. Again, not certain about what we should do. And a key thing, maybe funny group dynamics, because they haven't been in a large group in a team environment for a long time. So what about the player who's maybe fallen out with her friends a little bit just because she hasn't seen them? Maybe she was on the periphery already and now she hasn't seen them, so she's even more on the periphery. So we need to be watching for that too. Now, have a think about this. What do we want? From a competitive point of view, the most important thing is you want injury-free players. That's the most important thing for two reasons. Because they can't play the game that they love, that they haven't been allowed to play. If they're injured, they'll be sitting on the sideline. And secondly, if you're going to have a lot of games in a row, we can't afford to have players unable to play. We're going to need a nice, healthy squad to get through all these games. So injury prevention and keeping players on the pitch and fit to play is going to be important. We're going to need the skills to improve. Again, they might have been passing to one other person, probably in a linear way up and down, or kicking against a wall. They probably haven't been doing a lot of kicking on the move to someone who's on the move. They probably haven't been thinking about the game, and maybe their physical fitness has dropped down. So all of those things are going to be what we need to kind of build on to be nice and competitive. From a social point of view, we need happy players, we need a comfortable environment, we need to reconnect to the group, and we want people in our club. So we want that space to feel really good. We've all seen pictures of and driven by our GA clubs with the gate locked and it just feels strange. So we have to remember that just getting people back in the club and feeling good about it and enjoying competitive team sport. We've said we've missed it for so long, and that has to be important. That has to be what we want for our players, that they get to come back and enjoy competitive team sport. It's vital. So here's a question to think about. Are you preparing for the first championship game or the championship itself? And that is a key decision to make and a key consideration when you're planning. Because we can all push and peak for that one game. But what about as it goes on? Are we making sure that our players are going to be able to play week after week after week? That's a key thing to consider. So, if this is the truth, that enjoyment of competitive team sport, that's what we want. Players need to be on the pitch. We need to focus on the game of football because it's a game of football that they haven't been playing. And from a player retention point of view, and I've talked to a lot of coaches, and a lot of people are saying, oh, people might drop out and not really sure we'll lose players because they'll just be out of the habit and they mightn't want to come back. So when they come back, especially that first session, those first couple of sessions, it should remind them, geez, this is why I love this sport. This is why I love this game. Like, you have to have that in your session. And then you also have to understand players who have concerns, because all of this is on an opt-in basis. So yes, we are reopening our clubs and we are kickstarting our training, but people may have vulnerable people at home that they don't want, they're not comfortable in the environment, and we have to respect that, and we have to not make them feel bad, basically, and not put them under any pressure. And a key point, this season is not normal, and for a while we didn't think we would have any sport in 2020. Now we're given an opportunity to play a bit, and let's make sure, and I'm speaking to myself as well as to you, I'm speaking to every coach of every sport, let's not take the good out of it. Let's make sure that we enjoy it and players enjoy it. So what have we learned from other sports? So already in soccer, in female soccer, we've seen from European leagues and leagues in different countries and competitions in different countries, we've already seen an increase in injury when they return to play, return to competition. So it's happening in female sport, it's happening in male sport, and we won't know until probably 2021 what happened when we look back retrospectively. But we're getting early reports from other sports that injury rate has gone up when competition has started again. A big reference point for a lot of people in sport at the minute is this NFL lockout in 2011. Now I know it's an entirely different sport, but basically there was a big lockdown and all players wouldn't play. So their pre-season went from 12 to 14 weeks to 17 days. Then their competition kicked off. Achilles tendon ruptures went up 4 times as many. Okay, so that's the thing about it. It's a big high-powered sport, loads of explosive movements. They went back to play. They weren't ready for it. Bang, 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 bang. Achilles tendons going all over the place. So one of my early points was we need to keep injury-free players from a player welfare point of view, but also from a competitive point of view. We need our players injury-free. What we know from sports science and physios will absolutely agree with me on this one. So any quick increases in training load causes injuries or increases the risk of injury. So that happens when you're coming back from an off season. If you go like this too fast in terms of the load of training, you increase the risk of injury. Also during a season. So during a season, if I'm monitoring training load, I'm always looking for big spikes, because a big spike in training load, again, that player is more susceptible to injuries in that the little window after that spike, because they're not used to it. So we've got hamstrings in relation to sprinting and high speed running. We've got groins in relation to twisting and turning. And then we've got fatigue. So I mean, everyone's talking about 5Ks at the minute. So 5Ks, you're going to run them anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, that's roughly, right? So people may have been running 20 to 30 minutes in a straight line, but they haven't been going for 45, 50, 60 minutes, stopping, starting, twisting, turning, all of the stuff that they do in a game of football. So therefore, under fatigue, balance, decelerations, change of directions, skill execution. So a big long 40-meter kick when you're fatigued after 45 minutes, when you haven't been doing that for months, they're all little injury risks. So as fatigue increases, so does the risk of injury. So we have to build players up slowly. Otherwise, if you go hell for leather too early, they might last a couple of sessions and then boom, you're going to start getting hamstring injuries. Players are going to get tired, form will get sloppy, they might roll an ankle, all that sort of stuff. So that's why I started with what's urgent and what's important. We may feel under pressure that the championship is looming, and we said at the start of the year that we were going to win the championship, but we didn't account for a big pandemic in the middle of it. So we have to readjust, and we have to realize what's important. Important is our players enjoying their football and staying on the pitch. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't train really well and be competitive. We just have to make sure we're aware of some of the pitfalls. So here's a lead-in time. Now this is worst case scenario, and going from Monday the 29th of June, which is when contact is allowed. So contact is allowed in the Republic of Ireland from next Monday. The date that LGFA have given for the start of competitive club games is the 17th of July. So worst case scenario, could be dealing with the lead-in of 2.5 to 3 weeks. That's presuming that you can start next Monday, and that's presuming that that game, your first game, is on the 17th of July. Your county mightn't start them for another little while. That is a county's choice, whatever. So worst case scenario, you could have 3 weeks, 2 sessions a week, that's 6 training sessions. 6 training sessions of 60 minutes, 6 hours or 360 minutes. So that could be your preparation time. Think about that now. 360 minutes could be your preparation time. You might have dual players. You might be playing other sports. Do you always have 100% attendance? Probably not. So you could have even less time. So how are you going to use it? How are you going to spend those 360 minutes? Or maybe, look, you might have 400 minutes. And I think this is a good time to talk about fitness tests. Now, I'm from an athletic development, strength and conditioning background. That's what I do a lot of the time. So fitness tests are my bread and butter. I use them a lot. And you can test everything and anything from a physical point of view, from a fitness point of view. But I've learned over the last number of years, we love testing because we love getting numbers and everything is fancy, and you can put it in a green, orange and red and it looks really, really impressive. But sometimes you have to question, is how valuable is it? So right now, here's the value of a fitness test. So here's the pros and cons. So an understanding of where players are at. So you will get a leaderboard for yourself to look at. Okay, you'll get an understanding of who needs what. So where is everybody at? If you've tested earlier in the year, so let's say you did a test in February, you'll have a comparison. Are they ahead or behind of where they were back then? So great information to have. No problem with it. And I can see why people would want to do it. However, here's a couple of things to challenge that. Is it a good use of time? What test are you going to do? If you have 6 to 10 hours of preparation time, is it a good use of your time? Secondly, is it going to tell you anything you won't know from watching them? I think we underestimate ourselves as coaches. So if you had them out playing or training for an hour and you stood back and watched, I'm pretty sure you'd figure out who's fit and who's not fit. You mightn't have an exact number, but you could probably do that pecking order yourself, and you mightn't be too. So the person who looks unfit and who looks slow, the fitness test is probably going to say they're unfit and they're the slowest on the team. You're probably not going to learn anything you won't see. Are you going to retest? So are you just going to test? And like even in a regular season, so many teams all over the country, county, club, everything, they do that first test and they make a big hoo-ha the first test, and they never retest ever. So what's the point? What's the point unless you're going to use it? The purpose of a test is test, train, test again, see if they're any different. So if championship is going to start in 4 weeks' time, and in order to make an improvement on a fitness element, you have to give people time to train and improve. Are you going to test a week out? Are you going to retest a week out from championship? I don't think you are. So there's just something to think about. Secondly, or point 4 and 5 there, does your squad have a culture of testing already? If it does, it may be more useful because players are used to it and they think, oh yeah, this is where I was this time last year, and a little bit more work. So it could be quite motivational and positive for them. Or if your squad isn't used to testing, is it just going to make people feel bad? Oh God, I didn't do anything over lockdown now. Oh, I'm terrible. And geez, I was running 5Ks, but this is different. This is a yo-yo test, so it's stop and start. So is it going to benefit your players? Or is it going to just add to the stress? And is it going to tell you anything that you probably couldn't figure out yourself? So I'm not saying don't fitness test, but I'm saying make sure it's valuable and it's actually a good use of time. Okay, so if we take our game, the demands of our game, and what people have been doing over lockdown, what our challenge is over the next couple of weeks is take them from here to be ready to play our game. So what have people been doing? That's what we've got to think about. And what have they been missing? So here's some things. They've been missing the ball probably. And TUF and TUP. Some of you might have heard of those terms. Technique under fatigue, technique under pressure. I'm pretty sure 95% of players have been missing these. So that is executing a kick pass when you're tired, or executing a kick pass when there's someone challenging you from behind. Making a catch when there's someone right beside you. Getting up, getting your feet off the ground when you're tired in this 57th minute of the game. They've been missing that. Agility. They've been missing deceleration, acceleration, change of direction. So all that stop, start, twist, turn. They haven't been doing it. They've been missing collisions, natural contact. Obviously, our sport is a non-contact sport, but there are natural collisions. You know, two people going for a ball. There is contact of bodies. There is tumbles. I slip and I roll on the ground. So there's all that impact stuff. Plyometrics, jumping, landing, all of that stuff. Communication in big groups, face-to-face communication. We're all on webinars and Zooms and all sorts of house party apps and all of this, but actually talking. I don't know about you, but being out and about, and even you meet people outside the shop and even figuring out where to stand. You know, I feel like I'm miles away from people talking at them or talking to them. So that idea of communicating in a big group, they've missed that. Speed. If they've been, I've been going out for jogs, I've been running along the beach, I've been running around the local park. Have they been sprinting? Probably not. Have they been doing intermittent running, short bursts of intense activity? Probably not. So these are all the bits that we need to reintegrate in our training sessions. And these are all the bits that are most hard on the body. So if we throw all of this high intensity back in session number 1 and we go harder in session number 2 and throw it all at them at the one time, it's going to be very physically challenging and even mentally challenging. They haven't had to focus for 45, 50, 60 minutes yet. Focus on a physical task where they have to execute skills. So even just the mental strength it takes to complete a hard training session like that will be a challenge for players. So our job is to start building in this stuff and getting them ready for our games. So I've talked a lot about injuries, minimizing injury risk. So here are the really, really important things you've got to do. And I don't say any of this lightly. Complete a proper warm-up. Now, what's the reality of it? The reality of it is in clubs, there's probably strict timetables in terms of pitch availability. So you got to start at 7, you got to be finished at 5 to 8, and you got to get out of there so the next player or the next group can come in, etc. So logistically, we might be on a tight schedule, and you think, oh God, I don't know, like 15 minutes for a warm-up, or can you do it in 6? Can we just do a few L stretches and get going? You are not looking after your players if you do not complete a proper warm-up. Simple fact, there's no other way for me to say it. That you are doing them a disservice if you do not complete a proper warm-up. And a proper warm-up will lead them to perform better in training anyway. So it's in your interest to do a proper warm-up. GAA 15, if you log on to the GAA website and the coaching section, that look up the GAA 15 warm-up. It has all the different components that you need in a proper warm-up. The dynamic stretches, raising the heart rate, changes the direction, all of the stuff you need. So if you're not sure about what a proper warm-up looks like, look at that. Simple as. And if you don't take that into consideration, you're not doing your players justice, okay? Full stop. Progressively increase the intensity of your session. And we're going to talk about what intensity of a session means. My point here is, and it follows the next point as well, adds into the next point. So slowly building up over 3 or 4 sessions. What we don't want is going from nothing to 100 miles an hour. We've got to slowly build up to our games. We have to progressively increase week on week. And what I'm going to talk about as well is how do we plan that progression? You've got to include some progressive agility and contact. You've got to reintroduce that stuff in a controlled manner. You've also got to include small areas and big areas. So think of the demands of our game. And I want you to think about this for a minute. So what do you get in a small area? Think about a 10 by 10 square, and you have 10 by 10 square and you're playing 6v6 possession game versus a 10 by 10 area and you're playing a 2v2 possession game. So think about that for a second. So 2v2 in a 2v2 players in a 10 by 10 area. Okay, you're going to get some agility, some changes of direction. You're going to get loads of touches of the ball because there's only 2 people on a team, and you're going to get fatigue because they're going to have to work hard. There's nowhere to hide if there's only 2 players, because if your teammate has the ball, you're the only person they can pass to. Okay, so you have to show up. If you go 6v6 in that area, there's going to be loads more natural collisions. Okay, more twisting and turning, all of that type of thing. So it'll be more intense. But you might find a team of 6, 3 players would do all the work and 3 players will kind of hide. Geez, I'm really unfit, so I'll get 1 or 2 passes here and that'll be it. Okay, so small area, more twisting and turning, more opportunities for physical contact. It doesn't always mean you can play small areas, large numbers, or small areas, low numbers. Then go to the bigger areas. So the bigger areas, way less contact. Way less. You often find if you play a big area, half a pitch or 50 by 50 meters, you'll have one team that keeps the ball for the whole time because nobody can make a tackle because they're not marking tight enough. But what have you got then? You've got a load of high speed running. They're opening up the legs. They have opportunities to run. They have opportunities to sprint. You don't get that in a 10 by 10 area. You can never really get up to top speed. because there's nowhere to run. You hit the side of the square. Again, big area. You can play, let's imagine 6v6 versus 2v2, or let's say 3v3. So if you played a big area in 3v3, oh my God, they're going to have to run, and there's going to be high fatigue in that. And again, they're going to get loads of touches of the ball. 6v6 in that area, you're definitely going to have a couple of people to hide. Okay, so you need to include both types in your training, because that's, in a game, we've close contact scenarios, we're in and around a tight area, and we've big long ones, which all of a sudden I've made a couple of tackles and then I've got to boot it up the pitch, I'm a wing back, I've got to run for 50 meters and I've got to deliver a pass. So we've got to be prepared for those two scenarios, and they are physically different in terms of what the body needs to do. So small areas, big areas. You can also think about having a square within a big square. So you could play a 3v3 in a small square, and then all of a sudden on the whistle, blows the whistle, and now you're playing in the big square. So we have to go from a small area into a big area. We've got to think differently. The space is different. There's no time to reassess. So think about the sizes of the space that you use, and what's that going to do for a player, or how are you going to challenge them? Have a read through these questions. Questions to ask yourself when session planning. So in case some of you you're just listening to audio. Have I allowed enough time for a proper warm-up? Can I get their hands on the ball in the warm-up? Is there an element that will make them laugh? So think about having a bit of crack. Don't we want people to enjoy this? Remind them why we love them. So plan a bit that you know that they'll all be laughing. Wherever it is, in the middle of the session, end of the session, wherever you like. Is there a ball in every section? If they haven't had their hands on the ball in months, ball, as much as you possibly can. They can never have enough ball. At what point will they have to communicate with each other? That's something they definitely haven't been doing. Definitely. How do I practice skill execution and a game plan all at the same time? Have I included small areas, big areas? Have I included controlled agility and contact? Are they playing the game of football? So there is, 8 or 9 questions just to think about. As you're planning your session, think about these things. You mightn't include everyone in every session, but let them be little triggers for you to think about. So we talked about session intensity. Here are 4 ways to change the intensity of your session. So duration, total duration. This may be out of your control, but maybe you have the opportunity to build it up. So you might start with 45 minutes, then the next week you do 50 minutes, the next week you do 60 minutes, whatever. You may be on a tighter schedule, but you might be able to extend the duration of your session. Reps or volume at high intensity. So here's an example, a kick passing drill, and within that drill is a 40-meter run. Session number 1, you do 3 sets of 8 runs. So you figure out, okay, I need that player to make that pass 8 times. And then that set is over. So and 3 sets of 8 runs, that'll be 24 in total. Session number 2, you do 3 sets of 8 and a set of 6 at the bottom, at the end. So that's increasing the intensity of the session. If it was a small-sided game or a condition game, in your session, we're going to do 4 sets of 3 minutes this session. The next session, we're going to do 4 sets of 4 minutes. So same sets, just extending it out a little bit longer. So that's just the volume or the reps of those high-intensity bits. The density of those repetitions. And what I mean by that is, so that same kick passing drill. So in session number 1, you did 3 by 8 runs. And then you took a 2-minute rest and then you went again. But what about in session 2? You're still doing 3 by 8, but now we're only going to get 90 seconds rest. So you're pushing the work together. More work in less time. Option number 2, in session 1, you had 4 people at a cone. And in session number 2, there's only 3 people at a cone. So they've got to go quicker. So they're getting less rest. The next thing to think about intensity is linear running versus change of direction. So there's different demands. So remember that players will most likely be missing sprinting and change of direction. So if I'm jogging around a nice easy pace, versus intermittent sprint, jog, sprint, jog, sprint, jog. That's harder. If I add in change the direction, that's harder again on the body. That's more intense. If I have to sprint 20 meters out, 20 meters back, is more intense than just 40 meters straight, because I've got that stop and start. So think about that in terms of how you're progressing your sessions over the next couple of weeks. It's really important that you get this progression in. I wanted to talk about how you would progress agility, because agility is a bit that they have been missing. So I've given you an example of 3 agility drills. So starting from the left of your screen, working towards the right. So the first one is basically like a side step, starting at the green cone, out 10 meters, bit of a shimmy, round the cone in the middle, and an acceleration towards that red cone. If I were you, in all of these controlled agility drills, there'd be someone standing at that red cone and they'd be delivering a hand pass, a ball in the air, a kick pass. So I come out of that last turn, boom, got to catch a ball, run to the end. So we can agility, ball handling together. The second drill. So the second drill, you're out 5 meters, and then we've got a sharper turn. We've got a 90-degree turn, round a cone, and then up to that, those 2 red cones. Okay, 2 red cones where I've written stop. So they've got a sharper turn, 90 degrees, round that cone, and then they've got to stop dead. So there's a deceleration, nice and controlled. They know when it's happening, but they've got to stop. Then you can have, again, someone at that last red cone deliver a pass. They've got to fire ahead, collect the ball, and join the red cone. Okay, so harder because a more aggressive turn and a deceleration and re-acceleration. The last one then, on the right-hand side of your screen, they're out about 10 meters, then they've got to turn right back on themselves, nearly like a 180. So really hard turn all the way back on themselves and a long sprint up to the end. So the sharper the turns, so if it's, think of a side step, then you got 90 degrees, then you got a 180 back on yourself. The sharper the turn, the bigger the turn, the harder it is for them. Adding in decelerations, again, harder on the body. Whatever drill you pick, there's also another way to progress it. So let's say the first time you do them, you've got a couple of stations and they're all doing them at their own pace. So nicely controlled, getting used to moving left and right again. Then you say, okay, four of the same drills set up. On the whistle, I'm going to blow it, and it's a race. You got to get through it fast and collect the ball. A good clean catch. If you fumble it, doesn't count. Okay. So then you've got 4 groups racing up the pitch through their agility drill. So that could be session 2 or 3. When you're putting it, you're going to naturally speed them up just because you've made it a competition. And then maybe you could put in some controlled contact after the 29th, obviously, which is next Monday. So if you take the drill in the middle with the deceleration, the stop in it, you could run that with the green cone at the bottom. You could have a player on each side of that. So they know where they're going. They're going out, they're going to round their cone, round the 2 wide blue cones, and they both come in between those red cones and they both have to stop. So you're going to have 2 players naturally stopping together. Then one player in that last red cone throws a ball up, ball between 2. They've got to compete. One of them wins it, off you go. So again, a nice, easy, controlled way to reintroduce a bit of contact rather than just going, let's go straight into a game, because that's the bit that they haven't got. And that's the bit under fatigue, when you take a little push from somebody just going for a ball, there's a rolled ankle or something like that. So we just got to build it up over the next couple of sessions. So there's ways to progress agility and skills. Now, all the things we're talking about, can we do it all at the same time? And I said this at the outset, there's so many things that we could be working on. And as a coach, you're trying to go, oh my God, what should I be focusing on here? What's the most important thing? Can you organize your sessions in ways that you can do things at the same time? So have a look at this. I have 2 examples here for you. So this is what I would call a pattern of play. So what are we getting here? So player number 1, ball starts here, player number 1. Kick passes out to this yellow square over here. You should be able to see my cursor on the screen. Player number 2, so it's a kind of a wing back position, has to come booting down into this yellow square and collect a pass. Then she's got to turn and deliver to this yellow square where a midfielder is coming through. So again, hitting a player on the move. That midfielder then has got to take the ball and deliver it into inside forward, wing forward. That forward comes in. Oh, sorry. Number 4 then comes in, receives the pass and puts it over the bar. And all players move in a anti-clockwise direction. So 4 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. What are they getting? Passing to a player on the move, timing of the run, change of direction if you're player number 2. You're getting intermittent running, stop, start. You're getting 20, 30 meter accelerations. You're getting shooting. You're getting communication. So you're getting a lot in that. Simple drill. And you can, that's just me picking a pattern. You can organize that in any way that reflects how you want a team to play. If one of your tactics is to deliver a ball into a full forward in the square or inside the D, well, then you design it so that one of those passes are in there, and you keep reminding them, when we're playing the game, we're looking for this sort of pass. So you design it like that. How can we adapt it or progress it? You could do the same pattern with a hand pass in a smaller area, working from both sides of the pitch. You could put a token defender in a yellow box, so just someone to stand there. They don't even have to defend at the start. I guarantee you, just the adding in of that player, there'll be fumbles, there'll be, oh Jesus, how am I going to get it? And there'll be all sorts of things just by adding in someone standing in that square. So it's really easy to challenge it. Session number 1, you say, okay, this is the drill. We're going to do 4 sets, 3 minutes each. How many scores are we getting? How many fumbles do we have? Session 2, okay, we're going to do an extra set. We're still going to do 3 minutes, but we're going to do an extra set. So they know it and they know how to repeat it. Now, what might you see? If you run that drill after your warm-up in the first 20 minutes of the session, you might see some fumbles, balls going astray because just getting used to finding range, hitting a player on the move. You can see a player running, the ball going behind them, mistimed kick pass, or a player running too early, mistimed runs, all of that. At the end of the session, what you might see is fatigue. So they kick the pass and, oh, geez, they're struggling to get to the next cone. That's all normal stuff. Now, the aim is, if you repeat that next week, they're starting to get better. You're starting to see less of that. The kick passes are better. The last time they do it in the session, there's a bit more zip about it. You can see progression. So don't think, oh my God, they've lost all skills they've ever had if they can't do that first time out. It will take a while for them to get their eye in again, no matter what level they're at. Here's another example. And this is one which is appropriate from when contact arrives back, which in Republic of Ireland is next Monday. So 3 players, 3 blue players, 3 red players, 3 purple players. So starts with blue players having to get through a channel. So you've marked out maybe a 10 meter wide, 20 meter long channel. So the blue players have to go through that orange channel, which you've marked out with cones, and the red players are in there defending. Right now, there's no ball. You could do it with or without the ball. Think in your head now, what happens if you have a ball in there? What are you going to likely to see? And what happens without a ball? So if you have a ball, you're going to see fumbles. You're going to see people uncertain of what to do. It's going to slow everything down. If you do it without a ball, people will just have to practice their footwork and they don't have to worry about the football yet. So it's just 2 different ways of doing it, 2 different ways of thinking about it. So whistle goes, 3 blue players have to get through their channel. Red players have to work on their footwork trying to defend. Then blue players get out of that channel. They've made it out of the gauntlet and they've got to receive a kick pass or a hand pass, whatever way. But if this is the 45 that the purple players are on, it'll be a kick pass. So blue players, out they come and they've got to receive a kick pass. Question. Where does the ball come from? Does it have to come? So does player number 1 have to receive it from player number 9? Does it have to come from straight in front? Could you say you can receive it from anyone? Could you change it so they have to receive a diagonal ball? That's up to you. That's a way you could progress it. So anyway, blue players come out, they receive the ball, and they've got to boot it up and cross the 45-meter line where they're soloing the ball. They've got to get out there as fast as they can. So again, they're striding out with the ball in their hand, practice their soloing. They've crossed the line. They crossed the blue line. Now, one of them has to keep the ball, and then they go back and attack the goal. And the red players become defenders. So where's the opportunity? Where's the challenge around communication there? Think about that. What's going to happen? You've got 3 players crossing the 45-yard line and they've got a ball in their hands, and all of a sudden, which ball are we using? No, I've got it. No, you've got it. I don't know. They've got to speak to each other under pressure. And if I were you, I'd let them figure it out. The first couple of ones would be absolutely dire. You could have 3 balls going in, you could have no balls going in. Let them figure it out, because they've got to challenge themselves in that way. Then you've got a 3-on-3 situation, gameplay, going for a score. What are we getting here? Intro to contact and agility, 30-40 meter runs, communication, gameplay, skills under fatigue. What you might see, uncertainty in the channels. Oh, how do I get by a player anymore? One pace running. So instead of getting out of that channel and bursting out, you might see someone, oh, well, I'm used to doing my 5K, so now I only know how to run at one pace. I've got to remember how to do that burst. You might see a lack of communication. You might see trouble with decision making. When you get back in that 3-on-3, who do I pass to? How do we do this? Fumble, skill it. You're going to see all of that stuff. But the aim is better over time. Just let them play, put them in those challenging but sort of controlled scenarios before you just throw them back into a match. So there's another idea. There's 101 versions of this that you can come up with based on how you want your team to play. I just wanted to give you one example of a pattern and one example of that you could build in a bit of that controlled contact and controlled agility.
Ina, before you move on, could you just go back to the previous slide for about 10 seconds? One of the participants just wanted to give a look at it again. Just if you just leave it up there for about, say, 10, 15 seconds, and you can move on again. She just wanted to take something down. That's all. And Tina, while we're waiting there, I suppose a question was asked in terms of under 8s, under 10s, under 12s, say under 8s, under 6s, I suppose under 8s and 10s, sorry. In terms of the importance of agility, balance, coordination, like a lot of this stuff is very relevant to that age group at a different level, different scale. The importance of the ABCs and skill development would still apply.
Absolutely. So all of those agility, balance, coordination, they are appropriate for every age group. And you know, you see nursery kids, they're practicing their hopping. That's balance. That's the basis of agility, is hop and stick. So it's just how we deliver it. So with age 10-year-olds, you can deliver that in a kind of a fun way, in a game where you're pretending you're a bunny rabbit or whatever, and but they're hopping and they're bounding, and it's a bit of crack. Whereas with an adult team, you might be putting out hurdles, you might be putting out cones, and you're doing it as that sort of a competitive race. And you're maybe not saying that you're going to hop around like a bunny rabbit to your club adult team. So, but you're actually getting them to do the same thing, hop and land or jump and land. It's just how you deliver it. So for 8s and 10s and juvenile level, all of that agility, balance, coordination is vitally important.
Okay, you can move on. Thank you very much, Tina.
Okay. So, recovery between sessions. This is also important, because even though we are going to progress our sessions and not start at 100 miles an hour, I'm pretty sure when people go back training, they will have sore muscles. We call it delayed onset muscle soreness. Some of you would have heard of the name DOMS, okay? So basically you train the night before, the next day, between 24 and 48 hours afterwards, you've sore legs. That's it in a nutshell, because your muscles have been challenged, been overloaded. The worst thing that you can do is sit on a couch and talk about your sore legs. It's the worst thing you can do. The best thing that you can do is active recovery. So there's nothing wrong with you if you have DOMS, if you have sore legs after training. It's normal. It happens all the time. So the best type of active recovery, so you're talking about 20 minutes of an activity that will raise the heart rate a bit and some mobility. So something that gets you a little light sweat, gets the blood flowing around your body, and add in a bit of movement. Okay, so a brisk walk, a cycle, a 20-minute jog, a swim in the sea because pools aren't open, that type of stuff. Now, 20 minutes, if you're a good runner, a 20-minute jog around the park is nothing to you. It'll be a light sweat and you'll be grand. It'll seem easy. If you're not particularly good runner, a 20-minute jog might be not active recovery, might be more challenging. So something That is easy, put it that way. A proper warm-up and a kick around is also active recovery. So you go out to the pitch for 30, 40 minutes, a local park. Yeah, we'll do a good quality warm-up for 15 minutes, and then we'll kick around for 15 minutes. That's active recovery. A light gym session, mobility, core, light weights, anything that gets you moving, that light sweat. Really, really, really important. And an opportunity for you, especially with sort of, how would you say, tuned in adult teams. Some teams won't buy into this. Other teams, you say, listen, you're active recovery tomorrow. Go out in a group of 3 or 4 and do some skills. That's it. 20 minutes, start a clock, stop the clock, then out you go. You're out of there. So encouraging players to do that, to recover between sessions, is really, really important and will improve their performance in the following session, for sure. Okay. I love this photograph for so many reasons, but I put it up here on purpose because that, like, look how happy she is. She doesn't even have any boots on. But that, like, that's the type of environment we want. We didn't think we were going to have any football. We now get an opportunity to go back and coach and play, and that is what we want. Let's not, my first point here, advice for the first 6 sessions, be patient and don't take the good out of being back. So don't get all caught up in, oh my God, this is so stressful. What are we going to do? We're back playing the sport we love playing. And that goes for coaches and players, because there may be players who are really stressed out and they only know how to be ultra competitive and ultra serious, and they might find this a challenge. You know, I really want to win the championship. How are we going to do that, coach? So setting the tone and taking control of the dynamic and the tone of the group is going to be really, really important. But definitely, we've been dying to get back. Don't take the good out of it. Do a proper warm-up. If you don't get anything else out of this, and it may seem, you may be sitting there going, oh, the time is ticking on here and it's 15 minutes and Jesus, we're losing time in this session. Hurry up there. There are only a few out stretches. It's not a good idea, and it'll catch up with you. I'm telling you, and it's not worth it. Do a proper warm-up. Your first session, start with something that's manageable and build. Okay? Make the first step something that players are walking out the gate because, geez, that was great now. God, I haven't done that in a while. It was tough, but I could do it. So physically, you don't want someone coming in and it's their first session back and maybe they didn't do much over lockdown. Maybe they struggled. They're a team player. So we play team sports for a reason. We chose Gaelic football for a reason. We didn't choose endurance solo running for a reason, because we like the team. So some players would have really struggled to train on their own. So you want those players to come back and feel like, okay, it was tough, but I managed it and I'm really glad I'm back and I'm looking forward to my next session. That's how they need to feel. And mentally, okay, I can do this. This isn't that scary now. The coach isn't killing me. She's okay. Pick a few activities, and I'm suggesting 3, and plan how you'll progress them over the next 6 sessions. 1, you'll get a handle and an idea of how your intensity is going to build. And 2, players will see improvement. So imagine in 4 weeks, in 4 sessions in, and you're saying to your players, remember week number 1, remember we did this exercise for 3 minutes and the balls were flying all over the place and we only got 2 scores. Now we've done 4 sets and they've all been 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and look, we're getting 10 scores now. Jesus, we're improving, we're getting better. That even immediately the confidence of the players will increase and they'll think, yes, we are getting better. They still might be at peak fitness, but they're sure as hell getting better. And that's how you want them to feel. Because the reality is, let's not kid ourselves. The reality is you're probably not going to get your players to their peak fitness for this championship. And what I mean by peak fitness is as fit as they possibly could be, because our preparation has been challenged. So there's no point in expecting that. We're just trying to do the best we can in our lead-in time. Some teams may have trained a lot over the lockdown. Other teams won't have. They might have done more running, more individual stuff. So there's nothing you can do about that. You cannot catch up on 3 weeks or in 3 months in the next 4 or 5 weeks. It is impossible. So there's no point in trying. What you have to do now is do the best you can in these next 4, 5, 6 weeks and enjoy the competition that we get to play. and make sure your players are feeling good about back playing football. 3 last points: using big areas, using small areas, and think about progressing that. So you've got to give them opportunities where they have to run. They've got to run 30, 40, 50 meters, soloing a ball, boom, deliver a kick pass. That's what they've got to do in a game. Use small areas where they've got to twist and turn and avoid people and evade and all of that. Think about going from small straight into big, back to small again. You could do 1 minute here, 1 minute out here, blow the whistle, 1 minute in here. That's 3 minutes, and then game over. We take a break and we're off again. Okay? Include controlled agility, injury prevention, jumping and landing. These are the things that the players haven't been doing. I'm sure you've heard talk before. It's in all the LGFA coach education courses about ACLs and lower limb injuries for female athletes. Our anatomy means we're predisposed to them in general. Okay, jumping, landing, decelerating on one foot, all of that sort of stuff is hard on those joints in the lower limbs. So we've got to allow players time to build up exposure to that and just get them comfortable again. Okay, yeah, remember to do this, let the joints get stronger. Again, you're doing them a disservice if you don't do that. Final thing, the tempo of a session may go up and down. So your warm-up might start here, next drill might be a bit more intense, up and down through the session. So some things will be more intense than others, depending on what they are. The key bit, though, from a general aerobic fitness point of view, is keep them going. Don't stop in the middle of that and have a big conversation for 10 minutes. The best way to increase their aerobic fitness, their aerobic capacity, is keep them on the move. So we'll do a drill, we'll review it for 1 minute, and then off we go, and we're jogging over and we're starting the next one. And then we review that, and off we go, we're starting the next one. Because they're going to have to stay on the move in the game. I would rather, with all my teams, that is the approach I'm taking. I would be 100% honest. I'm doing very little linear running from cone A, run from the green cone to the blue cone and back again. I'm doing very little of that, and I'm including the ball and games and patterns and drills as much as I possibly can. And my aim is to keep players on the move for the entire session. And short breaks for quick chats to go and get their own water bottles and have a sip, and off we go again. But no more than maybe a 3-minute downtime for a quick chat. That builds their aerobic capacity, keeping that heart rate ticking along for your full session. So that is my general advice for the first 6 sessions. Progressively build up and get them ready for the game that they have to play. Sinead. So I think William is going to take some questions now.
Yeah, so guys, thank you very much, Cliona, for that. If anybody has any questions, guys, please on the Q&A or the chat, put in questions and I'll pose them to Cliona. As I say, guys, it's non-contact from today until Monday, and then it's contact from next Monday onwards. So just be very wary of that. But I think from Cliona's presentation, it's to keep it simple, but also progressively, I suppose, progress it on. Just give a look here, Cliona, to see if there's anything that comes in. So I'm just going to give people a few more minutes. If there's anything, guys, please put in on the Q&A or even in the chat function, and we'd be happy to pose them to Cliona. So just give it a few minutes. So yes, guys, we've recorded the presentation, so we'll share the presentation post-program. So is there any advice you give or anything different from teenagers' point of view, Cliona? Is there anything different from a teenager, or is all the advice you've given in this webinar applicable to teenagers, teenage girls? Probably, I suppose you're talking 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age. And another one that comes in there is, this is our first session at senior level. We're really just getting started to get organized. How would you recommend we start back? Take it slow, and I think you kind of answered that through the presentation. So there are 2 quick questions. From a teenager point of view, is there anything different you need to do? And also, I suppose starting back, is your first session back, take it slow. Is that the advice?
From a teenager point of view, I think generally the same rules apply. One thing, and it's not really from a physical point of view, but I think it's important that, and I have 10 or 12 nieces and nephews, and some Some have become disconnected from their friends over lockdown, and I would really be conscious of group dynamics and getting that planning how your players are going to communicate with each other during the session, because that is going to be a challenge. And for teenagers, going back to our retention point of view, it is so important that these sessions are enjoyable now more than ever, because they have just experienced life without football. And now they're coming back to football, and we need to make sure that they go, wow, I've missed this. Wow, I did not like life without football. I really want to be here. So loads of games, loads of little challenges. It's a great opportunity to practice skills. So if we're in groups of 15, so a coach and 15 players, or 2 coaches and 15 players, so loads of opportunities to really develop good quality skills. And I think I would really hammer that one home, to be honest. There was 2 questions there, but what was the other one?
I suppose you kind of answered through the presentation about taking it slow. Your senior team first session back, take it slow. Yeah,
absolutely. Take it slow and build up. So in anything you do in life, what you want is that first step to be manageable. Not think, oh, well, this is boring, it was so easy. But yes, let's take a first step. Good old challenge, but definitely manageable. And then build on it. Every athlete likes to feel the sense of I'm getting better. It's a little bit harder than last week. And if you plan the progression, you'll be able to say exactly how it's harder. This was week 1, lads. Now we're talking 3 sessions later, and already we're getting sharper and we're getting better.
In terms of a general session structure, the importance of the warm-up. So give me, in a 60-minute session, how many minutes do you do warm-up? How many minutes would you do skill activity, patterns of play? How many minutes do you do for a conditioning game? And another question came about cool down. What's your thoughts on cool down? And I suppose there's some research saying that, cool down after training or a cool down after game probably isn't as important as the cool down you do maybe the day after. And just your thoughts on those 2 things. So a session breakdown in terms of time, roughly, what that is. And I suppose a cool down scene in terms of the importance of it, and what's your thoughts in terms of research and what it's saying at the present time.
Okay, so I'm just taking notes there. So the session structure, I would say if you are completing your warm-up in under 10 minutes, then your warm-up isn't long enough. So my warm-ups are between 12 and 15 minutes for a pitch session. Now, from minute around 12 to 15, that's sort of running mechanics and change of direction and all that type of stuff. So it's not like dynamic stretching or whatever. So it's the warm-up for me goes like this. We start slower and dynamic, and by the end of it, they're pretty much up at training intensity. That's what the warm-up is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring you to the pitch of the training session. So the last bit of the warm-up, it's controlled. Everybody knows what they're doing, but it's up at an intensity. So when they go into the first drill, they should be able to be comfortable at that intensity. So after that, then in terms of the rest of the session, it depends on what you're working. So let's give it a 15-minute window for the warm-up, and you've got 45 minutes. So that, to be honest, that's a personal thing. It could be small-sided games, it could be patterns. There are times when all I do is different types of games, and I don't do any patterns. And then there's other times when there's, half the session is different types of patterns. So to be honest, that's a hard one to answer, because I don't think there's any specific breakdown. It's very dependent on what you're working on.
If one or 2 other ones there, Clean, in terms of when would you schedule a challenge game? And obviously there's, say next 6 sessions, when would you schedule a challenge game? When would you advise this challenge games? And also, if you are playing a challenge game, the length of it, would you shorten the half to suit? What's your thoughts on that in terms of, I suppose, that area?
I think that's a good question. And sorry, William, I'll come back to the cool down one because I forgot to answer that one. So the challenge game, I would have at least 3 sessions under your belt before you play a challenge game, at least. And I would also say when you go into the challenge game, you might do the first one, and often we do it anyway, but maybe 4 15 minutes or 3 20 minutes. So play a bit. When you're on, we're on, and we're making our best effort, and then we get a break, and then we're on again. So I definitely wouldn't have any problem with, rather than doing 2 30 minutes, break it into 3 sections or 4 sections even. And those challenge games, again, it could be really easy to say championships in 3 weeks time or 2 weeks time, and this challenge game we're going to start with our starting 15, and they're going to play for most of the game. We'll throw the few subs on at the end. Really important that everybody's getting game time. Everybody's getting game time, because think about it again, we go back to the reality of the competition that we're preparing for. So it could be game, and the player that is number 18, 19, 20, 21 on your squad that you might think, oh well, she doesn't really play that often, you might really need her in game number 3. You might have to start her in some game. You don't know. So you've got to give, and to be fair too, none of our players have had any ball time. So when you're playing a challenge game in 2 weeks time or whatever, and there's been somebody sitting there, she might be the best player of the team, but she hasn't kicked a football in months. Give her some game time. Everybody should be getting game time in these challenge games, for sure.
And your warm-up, I suppose, the warm-up, and I suppose the importance of the warm-up, but also maybe can we utilise, always going away with a fun activity, and like, can you incorporate that in? And I suppose what your thoughts on cool downs in general, warm downs.
So cool downs definitely important. And William, you're right, there is some research out now that's saying, do you know what, the warm-up is more important than the cool down, the activity the next day is more important than the 5 minutes afterwards. But I also see someone, Claire Burke has written there about the last 10 minutes for team building tasks. Lead the pitch with a fun activity. Really good. So even if the more exposure we give our players to stretches, the more they get comfortable with them and they do them, okay? So you can definitely use that last window for, do some stretches and make sure they're doing them properly. But also things like, pair them up in twos and say, okay, I want you to do your stretches. These are the 5 stretches I want you to do. And then have a chat with your partner and say, what did you most enjoy about that session? Play a fun game for sure, a little 1v1 challenge, whatever it is. Again, something that is a bit of fun. They're leaving with a smile on their face. But also so there's fun and there's also communication. Get them to think about the session they just did. What was the best bit? Here's some questions for you. In your pairs, decide which bit was the best bit of the session that you enjoyed the most. Which bit of the session did we do the best at as a team? If we were to repeat that session in 15 minutes time, if we were to start it again, what could we do that would make it better? Give me one thing that we could do as a group that would automatically make that session better. No, okay. And some groups, you start doing that and they'll come back with nothing. You'll ask them their answers and they'll be looking at you like a rabbit in a headlights. So what? Draw it out of them. We get them to think about their session. There you go, thinking about their tactics, thinking about how they play.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so Cleena, there's one more question there, and what we will do, guys, everyone, is that all the questions that have come in, what we'll do, we have them all logged here. We'll actually answer them in more detail, and we'll give out an email tomorrow to everyone with the answers to everybody's questions, so that everybody can see the answers to those questions, because there's a lot of questions coming in. One came in, a junior player, she's probably over the 30s, Cleena, in terms of her recovery and getting involved. What are just his key considerations for players who are probably the older players? And also just one more, would you agree sprints and strong running better than laps? I presume you kind of answered that through your presentation, that would be, so I suppose before we finish in terms of that one, the older player, I presume the same advice applies in terms of how they integrate back into activity.
Yeah, so for sprints and strong running, definitely better than laps. So sprints is the thing that they won't have got. So building up to that over the first 3 to 4 sessions is going to be important. Your first session back, if you're asking them to run at top speed, go full tilt to that cone or whatever it is, you shouldn't be, okay? Allow them to build up and ask for that in session 3 and 4. That what you get out of running laps, that sort of slow jog aerobic work, you should get that. If you're keeping your session on the move for 60 minutes, you'll get that same aerobic effect anyway. On the older player, the thing that you potentially, just generalizing here, the thing that will catch you most is the stopping, starting, the agility, all of that sort of stuff. So ease yourself back into it. Definitely the active recovery in between sessions is going to be really important. Any of the older players that I work with currently, it's what they do in between sessions is what allows them to keep training. they're actually fine during the session, but it's the recovery time is longer. A little whippersnapper who's 18, 19 recovers like that, and they can go out and party all night and get up and train the next day. They're like bouncy balls. They bounce back all the time. As we get older, and I can identify with this, your recovery time, you do the same session, you're like, geez, that's taken a lot out of me. So active recovery is a key point for the older players especially.
Okay, Tina. Yeah, thank you very much. I think, look, there's a good few questions coming through, so I'm just conscious of time. So what we'll do, guys, with all the questions that you have, we will take them and we'll actually pose them to Cliona, and we'll get them answered for you. And following in the next day or so, we'll send an email out to all the participants who are here tonight with all the answers to everybody's questions, and everybody else can see the answers to those questions as well. But Cliona, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. I thought it was very insightful. I thought it was relevant, and I hope that everybody that was on tonight took something from it. Look, guys, it's great to be back, but let's ease it back. Let's look forward to, getting back onto the training pitch and enjoying it again, and then making sure that, I suppose, come when we get back to playing some games, that everybody is actually on the field of play, which is key. So, Cliona, thank you very much on behalf of LGFA. Again, everybody, this is a recorded session, so we'll send out the recording as well, but we'll also answer any questions that we haven't answered in the chat. We promise you we will answer them, and we'll get them out to you as well. So, on that note, guys, Cliona, thank you very much again. We hope you enjoyed the webinar this evening, guys, and look forward to everybody getting on the fields of play over the coming weeks. Thank you very much, everyone.